Hey everyone, it's Matt from Colossal Books. I hope everyone's enjoying their weekend. I hope you're enjoying your Saturday, or I don't know if I'm posting this on Saturday. I'm recording it on Saturday. I don't know if I'm going to post it on Saturday. I hope everyone's enjoying their weekend or has enjoyed their weekend. I just want to make a quick video. So I got tagged in this great book tag called the Counting the Days book tag, created by two, amazing booktubers. I'm sure you know both of them. They've both been blowing up a bit, but it's Prose and Petticoats and To Readers It May Concern. Both amazing channels. I watch them all the time, and both have really great taste in literature and are super well read, much more well read than I am. I got tagged by Ruben over at To Readers It May Concern, so got tagged by the guy who made the book tag. I'm not saying I'm a big deal or anything, but and the point of the tag is just to, first of all, thank you, Ruben. Appreciate it. The point of the tag is to talk about some books that we're just kind of excited to read, books that we haven't read yet that we kind of anticipate really enjoying, looking forward to. But since we haven't read the books yet, presumably we're excited about the books for some other reason other than what's actually in the pages, because we haven't read it. We don't know what's in the pages yet. So I have a list of, there's 8 total questions. I have a list of I have more than 8 books here. It's fine. I don't own some of the books, so I'll put up a picture right here, and as I talk about them, and I'll talk about why they excite me. So hopefully you'll stick around to hear me talk about some more books, which is, that is what I do on this channel. So if you've subscribed and are not looking forward to that, then I don't know what's going on. Okay, so the first question, and I love this question. It's what book excites you? Based off of its cover. And I think this is a great question. And I think it's a great question because I think this is kind of something we tend to not talk about, especially like in like the moral literature section of BookTube. People don't really talk about titles that much. I think it's great to just see a cover of a book and have that drawn to you in the first place. And have that, speak to you and get you excited about a book in the first place. I think that's something that's way more talked about in like the fantasy sector of BookTube, and I think we should do more. I think covers it's cool. It's cool to think about what the author wanted to convey with the cover of the book. So I have 2 choices. The first choice, it's cheating. I have read this book. I've read this book many times. I'm kind of using this as an excuse to show off this edition. Don't worry, the next book I have not read, and that's the case for all the other books. I just want to show this book off really quick. Anyone who knows me, or if you've watched this channel, knows how important the writing of Tolkien is to me. And specifically, I've read the Silmarillion and The Hobbit, but specifically Lord of the Rings. And I have the Alan Lee illustrated versions of the Lord of the Rings, the whole box. It also comes with The Hobbit. These are just some of the most gorgeous books I've ever seen. My partner got them for me, I think for my birthday or Christmas, one of those 2 things. But I look at them basically every day. And these books, we're not trying to sound too corny, but like I've been going through like a lot of transitions in my life right now, and you guys know I'm really busy with defending my dissertation and moving soon. And I've been through these transitions in my life. I've been really seeking, I don't know, something that's comfortable, something that feels like home. And I've been really finding myself rereading a lot of passages in Lord of the Rings because I've read it so many times. I've visited these places so many times. It just again, not to sound like a fucking cornball, but like it just feels like home to read these books. And these editions in particular are just, I'll post some footage of me like rifling through the pages, but in particular this edition of Return of the King with the Battle of Pelennor Fields on it is just, look at this thing. It's just beautiful. And there's the boat that Aragorn comes in on. Aragorn and the boys. There are plenty of illustrations in this book, some gorgeous illustrations. And if you don't know Alan Lee, he's the guy who did all the concept art for the films. So lots of beautiful artwork in these books. And yeah, this is my favorite edition, but I also do love the Two Towers with Shelob's Lair on it. Like, it's just, I mean, look at that. It's just unbelievable. And yeah, again, I know it's kind of cheating because I've read these books before. Look at that. And I'll talk about a book I haven't read in a second, but I did want a chance to show these off because they're just gorgeous. And I've been really wanting to read more Lord of the Rings. I've read it so many times that I want to read them again. I feel comfortable. The next book that I'm going to talk about is maybe the total opposite of Lord of the Rings. And that book is called The Origin of the World by Pierre Michon. And that's a book that came out in 2002. Here's the artwork. And it is, something about this artwork is just very ominous and compelling to me. It really reminds me of, I don't know if you've seen the movie Cloverfield, but particularly at the end of Cloverfield, there's this enormous hulking monster that you can't really make the details out of, and he's like looming over the camera, and it's this big, really like intimidating experience of this big looming monster that you can't really fully, you know, capture all of its characteristics. That's what this reminds me of. It's supposed to be a book about a guy who just moves to a new town. He's a teacher, and he's like can't sleep, and he starts to go a little bit crazy, and he's very obsessed with someone who works, this woman that works at the store. I think that's the overall story of it. But the story to me is like, yeah, that does sound interesting for sure, and it's a short little book. It's like 90 pages. But just the thing that really shot out to me was this cover art, this really strange, alluring cover art. I think this might be one of those books written by like one of those old European guys where it's like weirdly a lot of it is about their, to steal a phrase from Infinite Jest, their units. Which actually, the more I think about, I have it up here, the more I think about this cover art. Maybe there's something there, but whatever. Either way, this cover art is very interesting to me, and I will eventually be reading this. It's so short, so I might as well. The next prompt, I guess, is what book excites you because of its author? And this one was a little bit more tough to me because I don't know a ton about the authors that I write about, that I read. However, there's one author I talk about every once in a while on this channel, is Thomas Pynchon. And there's a couple things that interest me about him, is that like nobody really knows who he is or really anything about him. He's like very private. The only thing we know for sure is that he's from Long Island. I think he went to Cornell, and he was in the army or something like that. Those are the only things that are like really known about him. And that to me is very interesting, is that he wrote all these amazing and crazy works of art, and just nobody really knows fucking anything about him. The book of his that really interests me the most is Mason and Dixon. And I had a hard time choosing whether I wanted to make this the author book that I was excited about or the style book that I was excited about. But I think I chose a good book for its style. The reason why is because this is all written in like 18th century prose, and he clearly went through so much work to make it genuine and make it true to the time period. And I've read, I don't know, maybe like 40 or 50 pages out of this, just like when I first picked it up to get an idea for it. And it was alluring. I couldn't get enough of it. Like, I really love the way this thing is written. The first sentence of this book is like a paragraph long, which is, you know, Pynchon. But just that first line, snowballs have flown their arcs, starred the sides of outbuildings. It's just so cool. It's just poetic and it's awesome. But yeah, so weird guy, secretive guy, someone who really interests me as a person. So this is the book that I chose based off their author. I'm already at 12 minutes. I've only talked about 3 books. Okay, so the next prompt is what book excites you because of its premise? I have 2 books for this, and I actually don't own either of them, and that's the last time this will come up. But there's 2 books that really, when I think about their premise, the reason I don't own them is because they're expensive. But when I think about their premise, like when I heard about these books, it immediately was like, I need to read that. That is something that is so interesting. But you could go really wild with in a literary sense. You could really write some crazy things about it. And so 2 of them, well, the first one is The Instructions by Adam Levin. It's like a 1,100 page book. I think both these books are really long. It's a story about a young kid. I think he's like 10 years old, and he's been kicked out of a couple of Jewish day schools for like violent tendencies, and he's like starting to suspect that he's the Messiah. And his book is kind of, in this book, the instructions are kind of, from what I understand, is like the gospel that he is writing, like his instructions for like the world. And that to me just sounds so interesting. And I like the idea of this like 10-year-old kid being incredibly articulate and like a really accomplished scholar, which is like kind of the vibe I get from hearing other people talk about the book. And I really like that idea. It reminds me of like Calvin and Hobbes, how Calvin speaks so much more like above his age. And I think just the premise, it leads you to all these interesting things that could happen, all these interesting theories that he could go through, or instructions he could leave for the world. The other one is, and some of you are gonna roll your eyes at me, I've rolled my eyes at myself, this might be one of those books that I like the idea of reading more than I would actually enjoy reading, but I'll never know unless I try it, right? The other one is, I know it's a meme, that whatever, don't make fun of me, is The Tunnel by William Gass. Talk about like lit bro books, this is like one of the kings of them, but it's still like the concept of it is very alluring to me. It took him like 30 years to write, and it is written from the perspective of this history professor, and he's writing a novel, not a novel, he's writing like a history book about the Nazi regime and kind of the effects of the Nazi regime. But I guess somewhere in his writing, he starts to write this really dark, brutally honest account of his own life. And it starts getting darker and darker and deeper, and he names it The Tunnel. And he's hiding these writings about his own life that are just super spiteful and super, nasty. And he's hiding it in this book about the Nazi regime. And at the same time, he starts digging a tunnel underneath his house, and he's hiding the dirt from the tunnel he's digging in the drawers of his wife's antique furniture collection, I guess, which is like, doesn't this just sound so crazy? Doesn't it sound awesome? Like that to me, like when you're going really deep into this one person's head and they're starting to lose it, like that to me sounds so interesting, so compelling. I have heard that it is one bitch to read though. The next prompt is what book excites me because of its style. And y'all know, if you've been here before, that one of my favorite writing styles is stream of consciousness. Though most of the stream of conscious I've read so far, most of it comes from Faulkner. Some of it comes from like Toni Morrison, but one like pioneer of stream of conscious that I've never read is actually Virginia Woolf, which I know I'm ashamed to say I haven't read any Virginia Woolf, but I'll read some this year. One of the books that allures me because of this writing style is To the Lighthouse. What I've heard about Virginia Woolf's stream of conscious is it's much more inviting than Faulkner's stream of conscious, where Faulkner's stream of conscious kind of sometimes feels like you put a bunch of rocks in a drying machine. Like it's just turbulent, it's it's hysterical, it's super anxious, and it feels like a panic attack when you're reading it. So I am very interested in some nice, inviting, maybe some warm stream of conscious that comes from Virginia Woolf. I would love to see a different kind of style of stream of consciousness that's maybe less anxious. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. Also, Ruben put I think he put 2 Virginia Woolf books in his list, so this is also kind of like a shout out to you. But yeah, so I'll probably be reading this sometime in September, as soon as I finish Infinite Jest. The next question is, what book excites me due to its influence? I want to choose something a little bit different here. I could choose, I mean, I've talked a lot about influential books that I want to read in this book, something like War and Peace or Moby Dick, but I want to choose something a little bit different, especially now that I'm reading a lot of more postmodern writers. I'm reading, you guys know I'm reading Infinite Jest right now, which I really am starting to come around to and really starting to love and look forward to reading. And as a result, I've been reading more interviews with DFW and other writers of that time in the 90s, this like group of postmodern writers. And someone that keeps coming up, and both like Jonathan Franzen and DFW and other people were like in contact with and sending letters to, was Don DeLillo. And one book from Don DeLillo that has always, or I guess one of his most famous books, one book I've always wanted to read, is White Noise. And first of all, look at this cover. Isn't this thing crazy? It's the Penguin Classics version. The deckled edges, I don't love in this small of a book, but we'll survive. The cover was good enough that I wanted to keep it. I also hate it when books do this. Why are you doing this? Just let the cover speak for itself. Whatever. But yeah, White Noise by Don DeLillo. I think it'd be interesting to go and read this. I mean, it's small, very small book. It's less than 300 pages compared to Infinite Jest, which is over 1,000 pages, and just like how much DFW talked about being inspired by Don DeLillo. You know, I think it'd be really cool to like compare my experiences reading Infinite Jest into reading this. And I'm thinking that like pretty much immediately after I finish Infinite Jest, I'm gonna jump right into this. Like I said, I am starting to really dig Infinite Jest. I had a bit of a rough start with it, but now that I'm into it, I'm about 300 something pages in. I can't get enough, and as soon as I finish recording this video, I'm gonna go jump in and read some more. But yeah, so just because I know he's such a influence to like the 90s postmodern writers, this is something I really want to read. I want to read more Don DeLillo, and especially this book, which the premise seems the most interesting to me. So okay, so the next question is, what book excites you because of its emotional weight? And I have two choices for this. One of them is, it's kind of cheating, one of them, but also kind of not. The first one, and this is the one that's kind of cheating because I have read this book before. I probably read this book maybe 12, 13 years ago in high school. And I was entirely too stupid to understand it. It totally went over my head. As I've read more of this author's writing, I need to go back to this book. And that's Beloved by Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison to me is just a complete genius, a complete master with the English language. Her prose, it's a tie between her and Faulkner for my favorite prose in all of language, and she just knows how to fucking tell a story, man. And this book in particular is like emotional weight, like, come on. If you don't know what this book is about, it is about basically a woman who was a slave, who had a baby, who killed her baby because she would rather her baby be dead than to also be a slave. And it's kind of like her dealing with that. And as a high schooler, I was like totally shocked by this book. But again, it just went totally over my head. And reading it now as like an actual adult, I think that I would get a lot more out of this book, and I'd probably enjoy it a lot more than I did in high school. This will be a tough one. The other one, completely different. People who know me know I'm just like a big softie. I love animals and plants and all this stuff, and especially in literature, like animals getting hurt, that's hard for me to deal with. The book I'm talking about is Butcher's Crossing by John Williams, which is about kind of in the 1800s, like the mass slaughter of buffalo in North America. I've read that this book is just so depressing and so like really just talks about the worst parts of humanity, especially how it treats nature and how it puts nature below them. And that to me sounds like a lot. Sounds like I mean, it's no Beloved for sure, like, but this does seem something that will affect me or get to me emotionally. So also two people I know who've read this book say it's the best book they've ever read, so that's That's saying something. We'll get to it one day. Probably not. I don't know. We'll see. There's so many books I want to read in September when I'm done with this behemoth of a book. I just like, oh, I can read all these small books afterwards that I'm looking forward to. I'm thinking this might be one of them. We'll see. I don't know. I'll let you guys know. You guys will know. 2 questions left. The next one is, what book excites you because of its sense of humor? This one is a little bit tougher for me to choose, because I mean, much like Ruben, I do not don't usually read books for their humor. That being said, there's one author who I know is very funny, and one book in particular that I know is supposed to be hilarious, and that is Breakfast of Champions. I've talked about this a little bit on this channel, so I'm not gonna go super in depth to it, but I mean, it's got a whole bunch of like pictures in it, and a lot of them are pretty wild. And I know it's about Kilgore Trout, who is one of the funniest characters in Slaughterhouse-5. So this is one of those books that I'm really looking forward to. And I was watching one of Vonnegut's lectures the other day, and that guy was just a funny guy. He was doing this, I'll put a link down to it, but he was doing this lecture about like the shape of a story, and just the way he was even just like drawing these lines to represent the story, just the way he was talking about it was hilarious, you know? I'm really looking forward to this. This is also one of my best friend Nick, his favorite books. And I promise I'm gonna get around to it. So I know I just said this about Butcher's Crossing, but this one I am 100% reading this year. I found with Vonnegut, I read him very fast. I don't know what it is. I think his writing is just, I don't know, it's easy to get through. I read Slaughterhouse-5 in like a day and a half, which is just unheard of for me. And this is also chock full of like pictures. So, but Breakfast of Champions, that is the sense of humor book I'm looking forward to. And it's funny because like with like Slaughterhouse-5 and like Cat's Cradle, they're like, and I haven't read Cat's Cradle in like damn near 15 years. They're books that deal with really serious subject matter, but Vonnegut writes about it in such like a personable and like a quirky way that it's easy to get through and it makes you laugh, you know? And I think that's great. I think it's cool that he can like take these serious subjects and, you know, make you laugh about it. Maybe not about it, but make you laugh despite of it. That's what I meant to say. Okay, last book, and this one I'm actually the most excited to talk about. This book I am like, how do I say it? I should probably start with the prompt, right? The prompt is, what book excites you because of its challenge or its difficulty? And you guys know me, I am allured to more difficult writing. And this one in particular, I don't think many people have it on their list or even aware of this book, but it's A Fable by William Faulkner. I mean, you guys knew I wasn't gonna do a book video or a book list video without a Faulkner book in it. This book is notoriously, well, maybe not notoriously because people don't talk about it as much. It's the first book that William Faulkner wrote that won a Pulitzer Prize. I think it was 1955. It's also one of the books that's not set in Mississippi, which is different for William Faulkner. Most of his books are in the Yoknapatawpha County, which he, fictional county that he created. But this is not one of those books. This book takes place in the trenches of World War I. And I was originally put on this to this book by a YouTube channel named Tomorrow and Still. I'll post the description or the video in the description. It's an amazing video, and I've watched all their videos, and they're doing like a life reading all the Faulkner's major novels project. And the way they talk about Faulkner's novels were like, it was really nice. They had some really great things to say about it. But when they talked about A Fable, which and they're ranking Faulkner novels, I won't spoil the video for you, but was ranked very highly. They talked about how this is some of those beautiful prose they've ever written, or they've ever read, and how Faulkner really like outdid himself with this one. You know, looking at the organization of this book, it is so interesting. Well, let me start with this. It's a book that is set in the trenches during World War I. It's called A Fable because it's supposed to be like a parable of like the gospel, and it took Faulkner, I think it took him like 10 years to write, and he called it his masterpiece. At least at the time he wrote this, he said this was the best work of his life and potentially of the time, which is like, okay, come on, Faulkner. The writing is supposed to be incredibly dense, and the timeline of this book is totally non-linear. So the first chapter in this book is called Wednesday, and the next chapter is Monday, Monday night. The next chapter after that is Tuesday night. So you go from Wednesday to Monday to Tuesday, and then the next chapter of that is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's just not straightforward, and it's difficult, and it's dense, and it's just very Faulkner. But I'm really looking forward to it. I think the reason is because when I read Sound and the Fury, that's one of those books I was always intimidated by, just because it's legendary for how difficult it is. But really working through it, it was so doable. It's just so much more doable than you would be led to believe based off how people talk about it. And this book is not talked about as much. This is like one of his not lesser known, but lesser discussed books, even though it won a fucking Pulitzer Prize, right? And I'm really interested to read some Faulkner that doesn't take place in Mississippi, you know? And also this really pretty edition from Franklin Library. Isn't that nice? So that's the book I'm looking forward to, based off of its difficulty. I've heard people say that this thing is just undissectable, like some people just think it's nonsense, but knowing Faulkner, I doubt it's nonsense. This is gonna be one of those books that takes a long time to get through, and I need to read some quick, easy books after Infinite Jest. Okay, well, maybe not easy books, just quicker books after Infinite Jest. Spending so much time with one book is, you know, it's a lot. Okay, so that's my counting the days tag. Thank you so much again, Ruben, for tagging me. Thanks for your videos. I love your guys' videos. Leave a comment. Let me know what books you're excited about. If you've read these books, let me know what you think. Tell me some books you're excited about. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks to all the new subscribers. Again, like I really appreciate you guys sticking around. It's really mind-blowing to me that so many of you just want to hear my dumbass's opinion on books. So that's cool. I appreciate that. And is there anything else I want to say? I've been recording for 35 minutes. This is going to be so annoying to edit. Okay, well, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to y'all soon.